The Bytí Foundation presents a lecture of the Spiritual University Bytí, Tomáš Pfeiffer, Trip, I welcome you, standing on the threshold of changes. The year of Plato has been fulfilled. Not only time will shake in the rhythm of events in the glory of the new age of Aquarius, Jehovah, the bringer from Prague, is coming to you with help. Awaited and invoked by generations, he will lead you on your journey. Will it be given to you to listen to his words? People have always sought that which is hidden in the word God. At first they thought that God was bordered by a mountain, a stone, a river. Later they began to perceive God as the unifying primary force, the primary whole that is behind everything that exists. You may be wondering why I'm standing here on the mountain of Rip, the symbol of Czech statehood, which has influenced our history so much. It is interrelated because the search for the podstata of God and the beingness is not achieved by an ingenious man who has received his understanding by thinking. It is given by the bringer, who comes once in 2,000 years and who understands everything at once. He is the one who has returned against the stream of time from higher life forms to show us the way. People don't always seem to be able to find the right end of the line. The era of the Jewish bringers, Moses, Abraham, Jesus, is behind us, and a new era is coming, in which he is born into a new nation, 3 times again. The first has already been here and brought his part of knowledge in the name of the new age of Aquarius. This bringer is bound to this area, and therefore I myself am standing here too. It will be this nation and this place that will continue to bear the torch of spiritual culture and spirit, and that will ensure the spread of that which has been brought by him.
Aby roznášel to, co přináší on.
God is the substantial and the most fundamental existence.
Podstatná, nejzákladnější existence.
It is a state, although the word state is actually inadmissible. It is impossible to detect it in a human way, but I'm going to try anyway. It is a state in which all dimensions exist at once, all the past, present and future times exist at once too. But that is a part of the creative work. So everything that ever happened and will ever happen exists in the firm unity of the existence, undivided, crystallized into the creative work which we as people perceive as progression and time, and thus find here our fates, our life events. Despite the immense magnificence in size of this formation, it is again only a tiny part, if it is at all possible to talk about a part in the infinity, because what exists is just a minuscule part of what does not exist. Once every incredibly long period the podstata exhales, a tiny part is separated and further divided. In this way the first dimension and time emerge. If the two initial points, which further divide into two, therefore quaternion, did not exist, there would not be any dimension or time. Withal, podstata is the same as the creative work. It is complex too, but it is not divided. In it, all the poles of everything are present as well, but joined together. As life evolved on Earth, new possibilities were emerging. They were lawful, given by the level of evolution. A being can reach a certain development as a flower, animal, and as a man can reach over again higher. From the human level of evolution, it is possible to actively influence evolution, and the spiritual journey is offered.
To, čemu se říkává duchovní cesta.
Before a bringer comes, and it is again quite typical and lawful, the highest variety of spiritual opinions is present. They are the old beliefs, repeated for thousands of years, the same all the time. They were improved, but often just deformed by the generations of men, by those who were oriented towards them and in tune with them. They are also new offshoots, since in this time there is increased pressure on creation seeking, and so many people create even more mistaken opinions on mistaken foundations. Into this chaos, the one who is to amend the human journey and give them the truth is born. But he is not accepted. He is a troublemaker for them. After all, they know how it is. Their fathers knew and they learned. And suddenly someone comes, and when he is 33 years old and he starts saying, "It is different," starts correcting mistakes. And this can be always very hard to accept.
No a to je vždycky velmi těžce vnímáno.
In spite of this, the spiritual journey is real. It can be weaker, better, or outstanding. Man does or doesn't take it in. He always has the freedom of choice. Without freedom, there would be no evolution, since what is forced is not taken in deeply. And so man can always oscillate between the laws of events, reflection. In India they call it karma, and their own activity. Contention, however, begins where it is decided what is actually the activity. Due to the evolutionary immaturity of the human creature, after all, he's the first after our animal predecessors, it very often happens that he reaches an opinion, that the spiritual journey is the mere repetition of something doing something, and he sees the goal and sense in his way or in doing something religious, philosophical. But we should ask about the construction of everything that exists around us, why it is the way it is and as it is. People use the word love on many occasions, especially in recent times, and yet there is so little love among them. One who is separated cannot love.
Tam, kde je oddělený, není milující.
Only the one who is blended with the object of his love really loves. And so we can say that God is the highest form of love. He is all of us and everything that exists, from a stone, tree, bush, to a molecule of air, planet, or anything else. Those who go through their evolution in this formation begin getting closer to this state, to the podstata, faster. And this getting closer starts, not when they seek their own benefit in the centripetal selfishness, their spiritual states of bliss, for example, the nirvana. It starts when they begin to fold up the duality of multiplicity into the unity of the existence. And they get in their conscience, I am, closer and closer to the fundamental consciousness of the podstata and God, if it is really possible. Yes, it is possible to a certain extent on each level. People will realize later that they were often just losing time. How much precious time they lost because they did not listen to bringers who never wanted blind faith. You have to believe that it is like this, or you have to do what you are ordered to do. They wanted only one thing, people's own evolutionary activity, their deliberate change. This is the main sense of the spiritual journey. Man can use auto-suggestion to tune himself with love, to widen his consciousness, but it is always mere auto-suggestion. Only when he takes this notion to his bosom and his whole being, and in fullness, it will become himself literally. He can say that he has mastered the given problem. The spiritual journey contains several levels. The first basic levels are general orientation, then deeper and deeper pondering over problems, and finally meditation, which, as the antipole, thinking with emotions, provides the actual goal and the end journey. Intellect serves just to provide half of the cognition. The other half is an intuitive or emotional perception, which plays its role in the final interest yield of the previous work and in rooting to the depth of being, which then possesses the quality or ability as its own forever. What we accept with our own intellect is lost in the next life. The brain is not restored in the same way as in the previous life. It is formed by new influences, including the influences of the being that is joining the newborn creature. So, what was accepted by emotions is coming together with the spirit or soul and forms the being, but only if it is taken in. The time comes when people will leave naive religious teachings, when we can expect the emerging of a new scientific religion which will be linked with intellectual cognition again. It used to be like this in a distant past, however, not in a pure form. After all, the last bringer was killed before he could complete his mission, which was a great pity. Perhaps it was only his period when we can talk about pure cognition. In the couple of years after his death, however, it was yet again just people who included their own influence on their level into the cognized knowledge. Nobody can step from his own shade. Everybody can hear only according to what he is like and a bit more. And this is his chance. So I warn you against auto-suggestion bliss on your spiritual journey. I warn you against damaging your mind. I think that the most important thing a man should wish for is change. Therefore, not the journey itself, but change. And the result flowing from the change to be a positive element in the creative work. What sense would be in it if I started to bite my hand here and now? What would it be for? I would feel pain since I perceive my compactness. In spite of this, nowadays man behaves exactly the same. Figuratively speaking, he bites his body by entirely destroying everything around himself. And since his egoism blinds him, he doesn't feel it hurt. But spiritual men feel everything as themselves, and so it's twice as painful for them. But it is a part of this mission. Let's return to the bringer once more. It is a being who set off on the journey of life, since time does not exist and is only in the imagination of those who perceive it, long before us. It is the complete being of mankind. A being of the creative work that in its mind bears everybody's minds and the mind of everything that exists. This being perceives itself as everything, and therefore logically, if there's any imperfection anywhere, he perceives it as his own imperfection. If there's any suffering anywhere, it is his suffering. The being is everything. Therefore, in order to improve the situation, he returns deliberately into a much, much lower level of life that he is on himself. And here, through his ability, the gift of spirit, the gift of knowing directly, without learning, without listening to anybody, I remind you again, he is awakened when he is 33 years of age, and he knows ever after. This being passes the substantial life of truth as it is, regardless of the present period's rituals and philosophic, religious and other teachings, convictions and bonds.
Bez ohledu na současné dobové rituály a filozoficko-náboženské a jiné směry a přesvědčení a vazby.
The bringer evolves in his form as well. Well, he does not evolve himself, people evolve. And so, one time the truth is given as a beautiful poem. Another time we can say sort of in scientific expressions. And yet, it is the same truth and it is constantly developed.
Dá se říct až exaktních, a přesto je to tatáž pravda a je stále rozvíjena.
He can give only what people are able to understand, and so he gives a bit more of it, certainly. But it is to help people to the extent so that they can benefit from it.
Pomoci lidem do té míry, aby bylo ku prospěchu.
Maybe once the next bringer, who will come in 2000 years from now, will already talk about what we would not possibly be able to comprehend today. And who knows how it will be with the next and the next. Bringers incarnate only into human lives because only since man, this evolutionary activity can approach from approximately halfway through his evolutionary path in this our species. Only man is the first species able to accept this active thinking, and that's why it is like this. The bringer is actually the highest being in the universe. He just must take on a human body with its perfections and imperfections, and with its qualities as well. People often forget about this. They often tend to proclaim him God and cannot see that he is just a being, limited by its humanity. And because of its humanity, they are often unable to see the most essential,
která je omezena svým lidstvím, a proto lidství mnohdy nevidí to nejpodstatnější.
The immense depth of being which is invisible since it is not manifested, and it can be shown only partially for short moments to those who are interested.
Máli kdo zájem, může být z části ukázána.
It is the greatest event in human history. It repeats itself every 2,000 years, and one of them is just behind us. Well, it's hard to say if it is behind us. We might be at its beginning. We were lucky in that we didn't have an opportunity to kill our bringer. He wasn't even very well known, so he could work. Well, not in peace, it would be exaggerated, but work regardless and leave his thoughts to other generations. Let's hope for further development in the age of Aquarius.
Doufejme tak, že ve vodnářské době k dalšímu rozvoji.
It is natural that the strongest resistance is present in those who have been following past spiritual teachers. But it is actually natural, the contradiction is not among them, it is in their minds, in their understanding. They all say the same, they do not differ in anything from each other, maybe just in the form, but the sense and the truth is one. Let's hope that the foretold golden age is really coming for people, relatively peaceful and wise age after the period of great unrest and changes. Prague is the place which will play the leading role in this next period of history. Here the spiritual center of world significance is built. Ferment can still be seen here, which is accompanied by refining opinions. Here, perhaps more than anywhere else, all existing known teachings and cults arise, to be left in the end. The bringer explained it with the following vision.
Přinašeč to vysvětloval tímto obrazem.
I was standing in a big hall which was filled by groups of people. I knew that my task was to teach those people to count, figuratively speaking. In each group of people, a man was present who was proclaiming his opinions concerning mathematics. One of them said, 1 + 1 = 5. Another one, 2 + 2 = 3. Another one, 15 and 8 is 40. I was standing there and thinking what to do. This was given into my consciousness. Do not fight against individual preachers of opinions. It would be useless. Teach people the laws of mathematics. Teach them the numerical axis. And then they will be able to decide what's correct and what's wrong on their own, since they will be able to judge it themselves. In this, the difference between blind faith and knowing faith is, a blind believer is often kept in an opinion that it is impossible to improve his spiritual state and dimension without somebody else. A knowing spiritually knows that the world is the change, rhythm, evolution.
Že svět je změna, rytmus, vývoj.
The last bringer brought one of the greatest secrets of nature that had man ever known. He explained completely the origin of everything that exists. So far, nobody has even surmised in his human imagination how it is possible that what exists really exists and where it came from. He explained that an impulse came from the infinite and great podstata, an exhalation, and a tiny part of it divided into two poles. The first duality had to be in duality as well, and so these two outer poles divided into two again. The first pair represented two powers, contradiction, antagonism. From the unity-duality of two antagonists separate the centripetal and centrifugal forces. The two poles on the other side are heat and cold. Man can hardly understand how to join these two poles into unity. How can glowing and coldness exist together? I can hear a skeptic's objection. This is nonsense, and yet it is possible. In another stage, these two antagonistic poles divide again, and independent parts, glowing, coldness, centripetal, and centrifugal forces emerge. Each of these proto-elements, forces, has its own character, and nothing exists that would not be made of these four. Each of them is a part of the whole and separated at the same time. Just like a drop of water in the sea is a drop and the sea at the same time. With this knowledge, it is possible to explain the life of matter as well as the life of spirit and the life of energy. The depth of this insight is so striking that present man, if I can judge according to my experience, walks past these insights as if he didn't know what to do with it. It can be said that it doesn't fit in his present view of the world or habit. But we will get over it and people will understand what the real depth is. The bringer's understanding of the sense of life, another philosophical discipline people have asked about ever since they became men, is also amazing. We were egoists for a very long time. Only I, man, I, my family, I, this planet. Now the time is coming when a great interconnection will happen. Gradually, every beginning is hard. It will no longer be man who is the center of the universe, he, the only one similar to God. In a short time, the dawn of the new Aquarius-like understanding will come. The real understanding of self as the whole, but only on our level. Higher and higher beings will come after us. We are just men on this level. Higher human species than us will come. They will have a much greater possibility of understanding the relationship between what exists and what does not, between infinity and the finite, between dimensions and dimensionlessness. But we are at the beginning. Let's be grateful for what we can reach. His explanation of lived love is probably what the next generation will be able to appreciate.
Co docení pravděpodobně až příští generace.
Together with the division as the creative four divided into the four forces, proto-elements. Simultaneously, will this division time emerge? Time is the oscillation between two poles, between outer limits. And again, the regularity is valid here, that what exists in the creative work always oscillates and is subordinated to this action. We have various cycles, heartbeat, man or other creatures breathing, the seasons, orbiting of atoms, practically everything we can remember. These cycles are valid for the comings of bringers as well. They are regular, subordinated to a 2,000-year cycle, plus or minus several time units. Nor time is a firm factor as people would like it to be. There were periods when Earth's year lasted 360 days, and in certain periods it lasted even less. The Earth was rotating slower, another time faster. So the bringer comes once in 2,000 years. During the interval, spiritual masters are born. Their task is in better case to spread the broad teaching. In the worse, one perhaps at least, partially sought out remains of the already destroyed temple construction of spiritual knowledge. I could remember several important ones from the last period, from the last centuries AD. Our John Amos Comenius and Master John Hus.
Jan Amos Komenský a nebo Mr. Jan Hus.
He proved the firmness and human stability in knowledge more than anybody else. I think Christ, when walking to his execution, hoped in a part of his being that people will understand, that he will persuade them. After all, he was right, and the truth is so clear and communicable. And I don't think he would be so naive not to know what human thinking is like and what it can reach. And yet, I think he was hoping in human thinking.
Myslím, že doufal přece jen v lidské myšlení.
Master John Hus went to his execution as well, and I think he believed that he would persuade the powerful ones of the spiritual and material world that it was not possible to be serious, that God would exchange his forgiveness for a human invention, metal coins.
Vážně myslet, i by Bůh dával odpuštění za lidský vynález, tedy jakési kovové kotoučky.
After all, we could have paid with shells or pebbles in the same ways instead, or with anything else people considered important. There are other well-known and evolved spiritual leaders, perhaps Buddha and others, but the bringer is only one.
A další. Ale přinašeč, ten je jen jeden.
When his mission is over, well, almost over, when he already knows that it is about to finish, comes to him one, chosen of his disciples, and he then bears his ability further on. Being bringer provides two abilities. The first one is the gift of healing, spiritual healing. The second one is the gift of spirit. It means understanding, not physical but spiritual, flowing from the overconsciousness, from the overall consciousness of the creative work. He passes this on to his disciple, just to one of them, who then continues throughout his life until his death, and who passes it on to another one before his death, and the other one to another one. And in this way the teaching is carried in the rhythm of eras until the coming of another bringer. Last time in the history, we could unfortunately see that it failed again. The very first followers of Christ found ways which were different from his first original thinking and philosophy. Peter spread the clean teaching, but then it was quite different. You know, every lie has short legs, and so certain lies come to at present to their end as well. Recordings from early Christian times were found, very early times, and to the great surprise of translators, they didn't include appeal on blind faith, but an appeal on spiritual work and improvement of man. Only the one who improves all others, as if he improves for himself, is the one who walks in the Spirit of Christ. It means that the one who shuts himself up on his spiritual level, the one who seeks his own maturity or grandness, does not follow him at all. Well, we shall see. History repeats itself. 2,000 years will pass and the time will come which can bring about great improvement as well as big decline. It's in the hands of people. When Christ was coming, it was prophesied that the King of Kings was coming. People started to fear in a human way. Kings wanted to kill the one who was the king, and the well-known slaughter of babies took place. Nonsense and stupid, since they couldn't kill him anyway. Time was not ready for it yet. It is a paradox because what this being brings is generally good for everybody, and thus lower and higher people put to worse or good fates, all of them can have maximum benefit from this, since Christ brings the laws of God. After all, the present bringer also taught us what the law of fate is, how it is created, whose factors create it, how man can improve his fate or, on the other hand, make it worse. He taught us about the relationship with life. He taught us not to kill, not to slaughter, even the lower creatures, to be vegetarians, since the last one was vegetarian, despite what has been written about him in books. It is therefore entirely up to us if we follow, ponder, and accept it, or if we refuse from the nonsense fear and fight against it. The biggest opponent of Christ was an Old Testament man, since Christ brought a new teaching. The biggest opponent of Moses was a follower of Abraham, who brought the correction of the teaching of Abraham. But was it really the correction of Abraham's teaching? Of course not. He just said the same. People should realize that what they learn and often just repeat without any sense does not have to be the word of the bringer. Perhaps the biggest paradox is that there's no reasonable man on earth who would not wish for his coming, who would not long for the truth, who wouldn't seek, and yet, when the time comes, the very same man often is the first to raise a stone and hurl it at the one who he wanted so much. It is strange. Perhaps it is the human way, some stoning or other torture. It is caused by the fact that man does not think too much yet. He seeks schemes. Thus, if I accepted the teachings my father and grandfather used to learn, it must be true, and what I follow is the only truth. If anybody else presented the true explanation perhaps 1,000 times, I will not accept it, since I learned it this way, and it therefore must be true. This is the main principle why people hesitate to accept a new teaching. Of course, that's only natural, since maturity means at the same time the ability to think and balance. So I wouldn't say it is due to immaturity, but it is due to the unbalance in the principle of human thinking. At present, we experience one of the worst periods of rational decline. Some time ago, we experienced one of the worst periods of intuitive decline. Both actually cause the same damage, only in different areas. Today, scientists speak with ridicule about feeling. We don't need it. It's ballast. Only reason, rational, cold, strict, critical intellect provides title to learn the truth. But this surely is not true. We can see it today more clearly than ever. People who want to think in balance must fill in both halves, to think it over and feel it.
Musí zaplnit obě dvě poloviny. Promyslet i procítit.
Intellect, if it is loose of a chain, it is a destroyer, a very strong destroyer, same as well as feeling. So not only wanting to believe, but also wanting to know. Not to want only to know, but also to believe, to feel. Then we are protected from the fanaticism. And it is fanaticism that destroyed even the most purest, most beautiful of teachings.
Co ji zničilo i ty nejčistější, nejkrásnější nauky.
When Christ's closest ones understand that he is who he is, they are in great danger, since they start feeling as the chosen ones, the higher ones. And instead of serving others even more humbly, they become fanatics. And this is the beginning of the end. Christ is not to be blamed for this. No, those he tried to teach to be humans are guilty. Time is actually a quantity which is perceived in different ways by man, by creatures, by the podstata, actually by everybody.
Jinak vnímaná podstatou, jinak vnímaná vlastně každým.
We could say that time is a kind of function of perception. It is difficult to say if man lives longer than a mayfly, which dies in one day. The mayfly may experience even more during its specified hours than a man in 100 years.
Možná i více než člověk za celých 100 let.
People are somewhat resigned to the idea of causality.
Trochu podlehli představě kauzality.
Indeed, it does work, and it is truth. It is a natural law. One unwinds from the other. One builds on the other. There is the past, the present, and the future. It is a three-dimensional perception given to man. There are also different possibilities of perceiving time. Higher levels of life go over to understanding much greater and greater time periods as their reality. And so, spiritually, going and knowing can possibly perceive every time period as far as its end, its past, present, and future as his reality. It will be the same perception as I, man, have today. When I experience the reality in which I find myself at this moment and unwind my feeling or conviction regarding the reality from it. Perhaps people will learn to reach other time zones in a way other than through reincarnation, because each incarnation that is coming is set where favorable conditions exist for it. It can be set perhaps 100 years after or 1,000 years before this incarnation. And yet, the causality will not be broken.
Před tímto zrodem. A přesto nebude porušena kauzalita.
It is similar to a flowing brook or river, to a drop of water falling from the sky, and reaching this brook by its pathways and continuing on.
Svými cestičkami se dostane až do toho potůčku a pokračuje.
The banks of the river are actually fatal events. The drop of water may be flowing near the surface, in the middle or at the bottom, where it will be chafed by rocks. Another time, the drop reaches a pool, where it stops the movement and remains there perhaps for a long time. This is actually an analogy to the halt of spiritual growth. For example, man accepts a damaged teaching of a sect and gives up thinking. Then he becomes bound to his influence for many and many lives, since it is an influence that directs us, and it lasts perhaps 10 incarnations, until he can get into the river again and carry on. One fate is actually one track of the little drop, the specific track of this drop. For example, from the poplar tree to that small willow tree. But then the thing people call death comes. Life without body and another incarnation to a new life, to a new drop, which can, however, be many meters or kilometers away downstream as well as upstream. Each of these drops will perceive its time. It will perceive it as real, and it won't perceive other drops with their times. And yet, all the times will be, or they actually are, in eternal constancy. From the deeper philosophical view, it can be said that nothing ever was or will be, but everything is. Fate is similar to a bookcase. It is similar to a static formation, in which all events exist, not only in terms of their existence, which can be understood by many, but actually also with their quality. It means that one fate we live, perhaps this fate of mine, can have its lower, middle, or highest possible passages through, and it will also be different to a certain extent accordingly. If there is any harder event in my fate, for example an injury, it can become the moment of my death as well as just the spraining of my ankle, and this applies to all other fundamental fatal events.
Tak to platí i pro všechny ostatní, ty základní osudové události.
Fate is thus a multi-layered formation of the bonds between everything to everything. Starting with atom, pebble, man, anybody and anything anywhere. Individual parts press at each other and linked make a circle in the end. We feel ourselves as people of our level today, but it is nothing more than our imagination given by evolution. Already at this moment we are at the beginning and the end. We are everything and the lowest one at the same time. Man on a higher, and sometimes lower, level of spiritual cognition gets a gift of leaving the human body, and he can in this state connect himself to the whole in a sense of time and in another sense.
A může v tomto stavu se více nebo méně zapojovat na ten celek v časovém I jiném smyslu.
Then he returns enriched, but he stays the same man. And until this becomes his real quality, he must go through many and many higher species. Man is here. There will be higher men than we are, then even higher and higher. We can say that it is as if observed the evolution of life from plants towards animals. The same period will last from the first man until the coalescence, the completion of the circle, entering and integration in the podstata. Some naive people would like to see the highest things in the human spiritual dimension. Unfortunately, they are wrong. Perhaps it is because that lowness prevents them from finding reachable depth, and so they are actually unaware of what they could reach if they could. I have just talked about fate as a finished formation, which emerges through crystallization from the podstata, and which consists of everything that ever was, is, and will be. It is therefore motionless and timeless. It can be compared to a bookcase from which a reader takes one book, starts reading it, and by the plot of the novel becomes his life events. Then he closes the book, but the plot still exists and he proceeds to another book, which is, as it were, his new reading experience. It is important to add one thing to this. The multi-layered quality of individual fates allows for what we call evolution. It is not a good idea of fatalists who say, nothing makes any difference, everything is happening as it should, everything is the will of God. Yes, fate is God's will, which we earned by our past deeds, and it contains only what we need. But there is also human will, which is the antipole, and which should strengthen the good events in the fate to make it easiest and thus beneficial for other passages too. Therefore, no fate will be the same for two people, and even every fate is experienced in each moment. Mine, yours, everyone's that exists, but only you are opening the novel today, and from our human and time point of view, it is now when you are reading it. From a higher point of view, it can, however, be said that the fate is experienced by infinite number of I ams, who go from death to another death. After all, can anybody tell where beginning of a circle is? Infinity cannot be divided into parts, and yet we divide the parts of the creative work for the sake of our comprehension. With fate, the idea of reincarnation is closely linked. It's unbelievable how people were not able to cope with this fundamental question of human spirituality. Almost everything supports the idea of reincarnation. Well, not almost everything. Absolutely everything supports reincarnation. Only human speculation is against it. One who is unaware of reincarnation can hardly explain many events of life. For example, an extremely good person suffers like the worst criminal in his life. Or a man who is evil in his substance, despite, has a lot of luck in his fate. A child who doesn't sin dies in terrible pain, while a sinner doesn't. Only look from a distance. Looking at not only one life enables us to understand the righteousness of God's order. One who is lucky today, despite not being very good, had perhaps helped or served somewhere in the past, and so he has the right to obtain help and fatal protection. The one who is good and disciplined today perhaps behaved literally like an animal and destroyed everything around him in a past life, And so nowadays he didn't obtain aggressiveness in his personality so that he can experience it himself and receive one blow after another during his peaceful life. The same applies to children and others, and it is even much more complicated. Nothing in the world is black or white. Life is always a complicated complex of various qualities, elements, bonds, which provide some result in the end. The primitive understanding would often slip off to the black and white perception, but it's not true. The relationship of good and evil belongs here. It is a function in the creative work, and we learn that it is always, where it is necessary, that somebody is taught by the fate. Unfortunately, the one who is to teach him by that he is evil is born as well. And the one who is affected by evil should not pay with revenge, but be able to, at least partially, wisdom in understanding, and resist if it is necessary, because if he didn't resist, it would be evil again. These are all great mysteries of mankind, and I think that people will shift their awareness from unimportant things to these ones. It is not absolutely necessary for people to know only mathematics, physics, or chemistry, but it is crucial that they know humanity too. People must be able to get orientated in their lives, but not by being given rules and taught how to behave in various situations, but rather by trying to transmit understanding. The understanding will teach them to solve the arithmetical problems of their lives. If people knew how much nonsense it is to wage wars, murder, steal, or harm others, they will understand that they harm themselves anyway. It is biting oneself again, but they cannot see this due to their egoism. They would certainly stop such activities. But if they stopped due to fear, it would be wrong too. They must understand first, and then the change will happen, and this change will be permanent. The law of reflection is the fundamental element. It is actually the law of nature that forms, or better speaking, do not form but chooses the next fate to which we come. It is the highest teacher who acts all the time, even with the highest ones. Its activity cannot be cancelled, but it can be put to peace. And so people in harmony with God's will not do such deeds. That would cause very strong interventions in their fatalities, and their life becomes, as it were, stabilized. They have more time for their spiritual work. They become happier in their lives. It is more or less utopia for people at present. But the time will come when the relative peace will rule the earth, and when people will dedicate themselves again to why they were born and what the sense of their lives is. The law of reflection teaches us illustratively, it is the fundamental regularity. You did something and you will experience it on your own, so that you understand the meaning of it. Therefore, those who are walking on the journey of cognition know very well that nothing exists that would stay hidden in their life and what wouldn't be put to balance. Once somebody wrote, "You will not leave until you have paid for everything." Well, people are not beasts of prey, however. They would like to be compared to them, but it is actually the sign of material decadence or the decline of mankind.
hmotné dekadence nebo úpadku lidského rodu.
Many famous people in the history talked about the same with similar words. We can cite Gandhi, Schopenhauer, Tolstoy, Leonardo da Vinci, Barnard, Seneca, Pythagoras, and many more who understand they were not beasts of prey.
Leonardo da Vinci, Barnarda, Seneku, Pythagora a mnoho jiných, kteří soudce lidmi pochopili, že nejsou dravci.
Not because avoiding meat would make a man spiritual, but the avoidance of meat is a sign that the given person has reached a state where he perceives others as important.
Že daný člověk došel do stavu, kdy vnímá druhého jako důležitého.
After all, when we look at the apocalyptic pictures of today's slaughterhouses and factory farming, when man treats animals in the worst way in history on such a massive scale, we must remember a different slaughter, war, that is coming.
Měřítku. Nelze si nespomenout i na jatka jiná, válečná, která přichází.
Bohemia is a place that will suffer relatively minor damage from upcoming events. Fate and God knew well where to put us. So do not think it would be better somewhere else. Remain where you are. Big changes will happen. They will perhaps bring the changing climate as well. Bohemia will become a place with a subtropical climate and in addition a seaside state, despite not seeming so today. So our border mountains will become sea cliffs in certain places. The Earth's axis will be changed, which, as has been proven in various studies more and more often, has changed position in the past many times, often very dramatically. Big changes will happen. Man will start from the very beginning. But the consolation I'm talking about relates to the finally fulfilled possibility of transition to a truly balanced human existence, when men's affairs will be in tune with God's again, for the unusual benefit for all of us.
Opět dáme do souladu věci lidské a boží s neobyčejným prospěchem pro nás, pro všechny.
We may still only look forward to the golden age, but it is coming.
Tomu se můžeme zatím jen těšiti, ale již přichází.
People can enjoy the period of development and general bliss for the next 6,000 years at least.
Zažívat období rozvoje a období všeobecného blaha.
Happy is the one who seeks his fortune in the fortune of others. Evolutionary pressure directs us towards this. It is not possible to take and in a matter of fact steal forever. Then it gets to principle and it is nothing to take from. So I wish the best to all of you who are watching this film.
Přeji, aby jste zažívali jen to nej a nejlepší.
Man mustn't just believe in something, he must think, ponder, and change. Sponsorship message. Biotronics is a non-medical discipline which takes care of patients with diseases caused by bioenergetic insufficiency. It is a discipline that emerged here after 1945. The founder was Mr. Josef Zezulka, and he already, from the beginning, tried, and we followers also strive, to ensure that the discipline is available to everybody, that it can serve everyone who needs this kind of help, so that this can be ensured. It is necessary to put biotronics into some standard conditions. And so, the Biotronic Center of Social Support project emerged. It has become a reality today. The center has already been working. We are building a house in Prague, and in this house, biotronic treatments as well as lectures of the University Bytí, as well as the Senator Syndicate, which takes care of the training of other biotronic healers, will take place. In order to be able to fulfill this activity, considering that we are a non-profit organization with no source of income, it was necessary to establish the Bytí Foundation, which was founded as early as in 1993 and which collects money for this goal. The building has been progressing at present, and I would like to thank all of you who have helped this. It was not small amounts, however. Quite a large sum is still necessary. Everything now depends entirely on you, on your support of the idea of biotronics. If something is to function as it should, the proper conditions must be created. And in the same way as it is for a surgeon, it would be an absurd idea to operate in the street, on a table, or in a dusty environment. It should certainly have a large influence on his work. Thus, it is important for biotronics to work in good conditions, meaning that the patient should be far from surrounding influences, so that the treatment can be carried out in full. Therefore, I hope this possibility becomes a reality. Every small amount will enable the construction of this non-profit facility.